There it is. The bell, 4 o'clock. Wellington and Shields, 100 years of service. Wellington Shields. I guess they're listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Could be. Anyway, so 212 higher or so. 208 on the screen, 212 on my screen here. NASDAQ up 192. Something interesting, though. Look, check out the oil, kind of unchanged, $68 a barrel. But crypto's been inching up all day. The last couple of days or so. We were just a minute ago over 111, almost 100. We are very close to an all-time high. I'm looking at 111,800. 111,990 is an all-time high on Bitcoin. Very, very strong crypto markets here, folks. Ethereum also. Oil, like I said, $68 a barrel. We want to see that thing kind of back off a little bit. Gold inching back up over $3,300 to the ounce. All right. Who we have? Ben, you're voice of God today,
sir.
Yeah? Do we have Mr. Byron Donalds on the hook yet?
We do not have him connected just yet.
Well, let's do that. Let's just roll the interview with Senator Ron Johnson. We taped just a couple of minutes prior to the show. Roll it. If the Chinese spy balloon entered the United States airspace in Minnesota, how long would it take for the Defense Department to knock it down? Would it take a whole week like did Joe?
I know because I trained there at Camp Ripley in northern Minnesota. There's got to be a fighter jet up there capable of interdicting it immediately. So it would be a matter of minutes, I would imagine, hours if we're off our game, but not days like that. I mean, they wanted to hide it. They wanted to allow it. If not for...
It took them a week?
Well, if not for what the news media exposed, they wouldn't have done anything about it. They wanted to allow it to float over the country. They were exposed. We just take the exact opposite view. China understands that, too, that we're being quiet but strong, and an action will be taken immediately.
Food security. It's a big, big topic, a major topic for the White House and really, frankly, for the whole country, for the United States. Just yesterday, I was in Washington, D.C., and I had conversations with the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, and the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. But also joining us were Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, Kristi Noem, Department of Homeland Security Secretary as well. They brought all the agencies together to talk about removing the Chinese people, the Chinese government really, from buying land and particularly land surrounding military bases right here in the United States. To talk further on this subject, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, which has a heck of a lot of farmland. Thank you for being here, Senator. And I bring this up because Kristi Noem said that she, when she was governor of South Dakota, banned the Chinese from buying any farmland in the state of South Dakota. I don't know where Wisconsin stands, but this certainly is a good idea to bring these agencies together. And by the way, the Senate was represented there in the House as well. Your thoughts on banning and even kind of taking the Chinese that they've already purchased some of that land, taking away from them, bringing it back, crawling it back, as they call it?
Well, certainly when they purchase land close to sensitive military sites, that makes all the sense in the world. If they're just buying land elsewhere, I mean, they can't haul it away and take it to China. So we still are able to control it if they misuse it. But I think one thing you're pointing out is, and I'm not sure this is necessarily unique, but I sure am glad to see how collegial, how cooperative President Trump's department heads, the secretaries are working with each other. I think they respect each other. I think they work well, and that bodes well for America.
It was interesting, and I remember covering this years ago when I was at Fox, and since the Chinese purchased Smithfield Foods, the largest pork producer, pork processor in the United States, and guess what they do with it? They don't sell it to Americans here. They ship it all back to China, or the vast majority of it back to China. Tyson Foods, some of the chickens that are being processed by Tyson Food, owned by China as well. It's a very, very scary thought that they're buying the farmland, they're buying the food processing, and a lot of times, as you point out, near military bases. I think Americans are really concerned about this. What's the right answer here? Should we be clawing back this farmland?
Well, first of all, put it in perspective. Generally, foreign investment in America is a good thing. It shows that we have a vibrant economy and people want to invest their dollars here, which helps us become more productive. And if they're investing to manufacture here in America with American workers to export back to their country, that's generally a good thing. Where it crosses a line is if it ends up being misused, ends up being a national security issue. They withhold vital products from the American market. Then it'd be a concern. But again, as long as the land is here, as long as the manufacturing is here, as long as the management is here, we still exert a great deal of control. So I've always told people of all the things I worry about in terms of the challenges, threats facing America, foreign holdings of American assets, factories or land, ranks pretty well down on my list because it's here and we can control it. If things get out of hand, if it's misused, that's something we can control. But when you're investing in a foreign country, you are at risk. I mean, that's one of the things
Senator, let me rephrase. I think maybe I didn't pose the question the way I really want to. Strategic investments in the United States. We wouldn't allow the Chinese to buy our electricity grid, big portions of our electricity grid, or any of our major energy production facilities as well, because they're considered security and strategically sensitive. I wonder why. Maybe the Senate can bring this up. Calling our food supply deeming them as important as energy or electricity, the way we treat other countries buying those industries.
Again, the concern is if they were to introduce something harmful to America. Again, there were a couple of Chinese nationals apparently caught bringing in, things that would be difficult or, problematic for our food supply, whether it's, fungus or some other kind of biological agent. That needs to be a concern. But again, they can do that on land that they don't own as well. So again, I don't freak out about foreign investment in America unless it's strategic assets that are then misused, or intellectual property that then gets transferred into their military use and that type of thing as well can be used against us. So again, it's a very complex issue. That's why we have different like CFIUS set up to analyze these types of investments. That's an appropriate way to approach it.
The good news, and during this press conference. During the press conference, Brooke Rollins was named to the CFIUS board, which puts someone in charge of our agriculture on a board that is in charge, like really the oversight for the security of our food supply. And it was kind of blew us all away that the agricultural department wasn't represented on CFIUS prior till yesterday.
Well, again, it's good news that the Trump administration recognized that as a potential threat and put the Secretary of Agriculture on that board. So, we are watching this. And again, do we catch everything? Probably not, but it's a good thing that we have eyes on the process.
Yeah, it's great. And they're doing a great job. I asked Pete Hegseth, how long would it take this Secretary of Defense to blow a Chinese spy balloon out of the air as it crossed over Minnesota into American airspace? And he said about a millisecond. So that was good news for the American people, I believe. Sir, the big, beautiful bill, last time you came on, you said you had some questions. It was in the House. It's coming to the Senate. There are some issues that you didn't like. And as of at the time, you were a no, and you didn't think you would pass by 4th of July. And it did. It passed the Senate. What changed?
Well, first of all, President Trump got highly involved. I spent 2 hours with him on Saturday, talked to the vice president. They provided me the assurance from the standpoint of a commitment to doing everything we can to get to a pre-pandemic level of spending, plus a process to achieve and maintain it. Hopefully we'll be working the kinks out of exactly what that's going to look like. House, Senate, working with OMB. Going line by line, program by program through the federal government to eliminate the waste, fraud, and abuse. The amount that we are overspending from what we spent in previous years, plus up for population growth, inflation. So again, kind of look at this as from a green eye shade, a bean counter, which is what I am, that perspective. So I'll be highly involved in that process. But, let's face it, I was always very supportive of the main elements of the bill. We had to prevent a massive automatic tax increase. We've done that. We've avoided default. Because of the messes that the Biden administration Democrats left us, we had to provide border funding. We had to provide more funding for defense. I would have liked to have seen a more rigorous effort in terms of reducing spending to bring us closer to a pre-pandemic level, putting a balanced budget somewhat in sight. We weren't able to achieve that. Look, bottom line is we didn't have the votes. We got big spenders in our party that aren't overly concerned about this. My goal over the next few months is to make sure that everybody understands here's the problem. We can't solve it only through economic growth. We have to reduce spending to a pre-pandemic level. And hopefully by just laying out the facts, getting people to realize what the challenges are, we can start moving, again, more aggressively in the direction of eventually having a balanced budget.
Senator, Marjorie Taylor Greene is floating the idea with our own Steve Bannon, Rav here, that she would like to end all foreign investment, all foreign spending, all foreign aid, completely, including Israel. And I think it comes at the heels of Trump said he was going to maybe send some more aid to Ukraine in the form of assets, not necessarily money, but assets. And it kind of got MAGA up in arms a little bit. But so Marjorie Taylor Greene floated the idea, I believe either today or yesterday, to end all foreign spending. Would you be on board with that if it did pass the House and got to the Senate?
I've always said if foreign aid was spent well, it's money well spent. I mean, I think we can exercise an awful lot of soft power, enhance our image around the world by helping people. We're compassionate people. We don't, as a percentage of our federal budget, spend that much on foreign aid. But again, I would certainly want to spend it well, and my guess is we haven't done that in many cases in the past. So let's tighten that up. I think the Trump administration is doing that. I think it's part of the rescission package as well. So again, all of this, it's just true. Any federal government spending should be well spent. And unfortunately, an awful lot's wasted, which is the main goal from my standpoint is reduce the size, scope, and cost of government across the board.
One more topic, because it's like the craziest news cycle. All of a sudden, everything was kind of quiet, and boom, everything happened. Elon Musk, over the last couple of days, has decided that I believe, it looks like he wants to start a third political party in America. What's your advice to Elon Musk?
First of all, I appreciate everything he did with Doge. I was a big supporter of his. I appreciate some people saying if you have still political energy here, put it toward a convention of the states. Because if you set up a party really focusing on reducing the size, scope, and cost of government, you'll just split Republicans, and you will guarantee the government the party a big government, a big spending, a big deficits. The folks that delivered us average $1.9 trillion deficits once the pandemic ended. They'll be in power, and things will get way, way worse. So again, Republicans are far from perfect. I mean, I was disappointed in terms of what we were able to achieve with the one big beautiful bill. But again, we avoid a tax increase, and it's a tough slog. I mean, it's easy to be a Democrat, spending money, mortgaging your kids' future, never being held accountable by the media. It's a lot harder once they've increased and ratcheted up the size of government to dial it back and bring it back down. It's a much more difficult task. So I'd rather have Elon working with us, recognizing it's tough. And one of the ways to do that is I've always been a big supporter of the Convention of the States, get the states together. And my standpoint, I'd want an amendment to limit government spending to a certain percentage of GDP. I think that would have the greatest impact as, for example, a balanced budget amendment where a lot of people just say, well, let's just raise taxes. I mean, that's what the Democrats want to do. Let's just raise taxes on the wealthy, which, by the way, when they had the chance to do it in the first 2 years of the Biden administration, they didn't. They didn't want to raise taxes either. We certainly didn't. Now they're railing at us that we didn't. Raising taxes is not the solution. It's reducing the size, scope, and cost of government. That's the solution.
No doubt. No doubt. Senator Ron Johnson, great state of Wisconsin. Thank you for joining us again. Appreciate your time.
Have a great day.
You too. Very quickly before I head to break, remind you about that podcast. Again, subscribe. It's growing. We can do a bunch of stuff. You can watch the show. Whatever you miss here, you want to hear that Ron Johnson interview or Byron Donalds, who's coming up next. You want to hear that later on tonight. Subscribe over there. We send you a bunch of stuff. Always free. Also call 888-601-0032. We're doing voicemails every day. You guys love it. You guys are amazing. Literally get hundreds upon hundreds. I got 500 last week. 500 in one day last week. Back in 2.5 minutes. All right, folks, my next guest, Congressman from the great state of Florida, right here, Gator. He's here to discuss the criminal investigations launched by the FBI into former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey for potential wrongdoing regarding the Trump-Russia probe. Happy to have back on the show Congressman Byron Donalds. Really good to have you back, my friend. A lot going on. You know, you look back, and Congressman, I'll do this. It was 2013, and I remember this. I'll never forget this. Snowden, Ed Snowden, he absconded with some NSA information on a hard drive. He leaked it to the press. It went crazy. James Clapper, the NSA director, swore under oath that the NSA was not spying on Americans, and it was the exact opposite. They were loosely spying on whoever they wanted to. They had NSA people spying on their girlfriends from their offices. He lied under oath. He subsequently spent 10 years in the deep state, and then got a job on MSNBC. The reason why I'm long-winded here, Congressman, I'll let you get to it, is because Clapper's not on this list of John Brennan and James Comey who are being investigated by the FBI. But any question in your mind that these clowns that have been running the FBI, the CIA, the NSA have been dirty for the last 10 years plus, especially with regards to Donald Trump?
There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, look, let's go back to 2015. Donald Trump starts running, and the press and even the Democrats thought it wasn't serious. And when he started picking up steam with the American people, they panicked. And the way they panicked was to unleash the intelligence community, in part to unleash the FISA process and to unleash the deep state against Donald Trump. It was wrong then. It was wrong still today. And so I'm glad that the FBI is going in to investigate this. It's long overdue. One of the main issues, and we actually in Congress, when we went through FISA reauthorization, one of the major issues that came up was the spying on the Trump campaign at the time, but then also the spying incidences against Americans over the last decade. There's been hundreds of thousands of violations of the process under FISA, and it has been used, like you said, to spy on random Americans for a bunch of different reasons. So this investigation, like I said, long overdue. I'm not going to speak to Mr. Clapper because that's something that the FBI is going to have to speak to, and I'm not going to comment on that.
I think he was the ringleader.
With Comey and Brennan, absolutely.
I think Clapper's worse, dirtier than the other two combined. I remember this. He lied under oath. I was watching congressional testimony. Senator Wyden. He lied directly to Senator Wyden. I'll never forget it. You bring up the FISA court is supposed to allow the FBI, the CIA, the intel agencies to spy on Americans because they bring it to the court. They bring the evidence to the court. We now know that the FISA court listened to the FBI's, we now know, fake evidence and gave them permission to wiretap Donald Trump. How did that process go? How do we stop it from happening again, Congressman?
Well, first of all, it was allowed to happen because they lied and falsified the reports the documents going into the FISA courts. That's number one. They lied about what the actionable, quote unquote, intelligence was. And so that's the primary reason why, in some respects, yes, it's the way the FISA courts are set up, but it is the people that actually brought those warrant requests into those hearings. So I think that's the place where you got to try to clean it up. There was an amendment when we just did a FISA reauthorization a year ago that would have called for the courts to have to actually issue a warrant. There would actually have to be a warrant that would be issued in the event of collecting more data on an American citizen. That amendment was actually defeated in the House of Representatives, I believe it was about a year and a half ago. So that's something that we're going to have to revisit next year. My hope is that a strong warrant requirement is put in to the FISA apparatus so that if there is a reason for the intelligence community to go after an American citizen, there has to be a warrant that is executed before access to that information is given. Yeah,
and not only that, they used the Chris Steele fake dossier as the evidence that they presented to the FISA court, and the FISA court turned around and gave him the warrant of spy on Trump.
Oh yeah, I remember that dossier. That was the dossier that the Clinton campaign bought and paid for.
And guess
there was
what?
this guy that just ran the SEC.
And guess what?
That actually was the
John
the
McCain
that signed off on that check.
John McCain helped push that envelope forward himself too. Remember, he hated Trump just as much as Hillary Clinton did, and he was part of that whole scandalous era of get Trump at all costs.
No, I totally agree with you. And look, taking it to a broad view for everybody. After 9/11, were Americans increasingly scared about potential threats to the homeland? Of course, everybody was. That's not the point. The reality of what occurred is that Washington set up this apparatus where they had a large amount of ability to spy on the American people, even more than, I don't want to talk about what they've done in the past before 9/11, but it really created a whole bureaucracy around being able to collect all of this metadata for instant access. I think if we go back to 9/11, one of the things that was clear is that you had an issue where the intelligence agencies, the different apparatuses, were not talking to each other. And that's why the information flow did not pass from CIA, NSA, FBI, et cetera. And in the meantime, we had attack in New York City and also in Washington. And then the third plane that went went down, United 93. And so the big thing we have to be able to get to now is a system where, is there an ability to collect foreign intelligence to protect America? Yes. Can it be weaponized against the American people? That needs to be a flat out no. And so a flat out no. And so any redesigns of FISA, that needs to occur next year. And, I hope that the speaker and my colleagues in the Senate, we take this matter seriously. We have to protect the American people and their constitutional rights first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think back during that 2013 NSA thing, Ed Snowden took off because he risked being convicted as a traitor, which could have the death penalty associated with it, or at least life behind bars. So he takes off. I'm almost thinking like Clapper lied. He blatantly lied, and Snowden was just trying to show you what they were doing behind closed doors that was illegal against American citizens. Why not pardon Ed Snowden? I won't make you do that, but here, I'll bring it to today. Ghislaine Maxwell, whatever you pronounce her name, is behind bars for being complicit in some sort of pedophile ring for these clients, right? I think she's only in bars because they were clients. Should she be behind bars if we are to understand that there is no actual list of clients of Jeffrey Epstein? And do you believe that?
Well, first of all, let me just say, I'm not going to talk about her being free because by just all of the information that's been out in the body politic for quite some time, it's clear that Ghislaine was engaged in sex trafficking. And so, yeah, she should be behind bars. Specific to the client list, to be blunt, I don't know because I've not seen any of these files. But obviously, I think that there was a client list. I think this thing reaches very, very high. And actually, I don't really think this is not even political in terms of Republicans versus Democrats. I think this is much more about people who are very high up on the food chain. And I think some of this information can be incredibly damaging, not really in a political sense, but more so in a national sense.
Yeah.
So that being said, I'm just telling you my thoughts on it. That's where I think this thing is.
You and I talk, we talk frankly, we talk openly. What could be so damaging that the American public can't know it? I mean, we pay these people. I
don't know, which is why I think the best path forward is transparency. Mm-hmm. And so I think that those documents being released, or at a minimum, the quote unquote client list being out there, I think is important.
Yeah. Real quickly, you spent a lot of time in Mar-a-Lago in the White House recently, very close to Trump and the administration. Elon Musk, who was like this for a while, now they're not like this anymore. This whole idea of a third party that he wants, a third American political party that he wants to create, it looks like he's going forward with it. Your thoughts on that, and any sense, insider feel on what's going on in Musk's mind? I thank Elon Musk for saving free speech for conservatives by buying Twitter, turning it into X. Thank God for him. I thank him for what he did on Doge, but he seems to be off the rails a little bit right now. Can you give us a little insight onto Musk and your thoughts?
Well, look, I think honestly, and I've not talked to Elon about this, but I think he has a large frustration with what happens in Washington, D.C. There was a meeting in the House of Representatives with Elon and at the time Vivek Ramaswamy when they were unveiling Doge. And, there were a lot of members who were cheering it on. And one of my colleagues, my friend Chip Roy out of Texas, said directly to Elon, like, a lot of the same people who are cheering you right now are going to be the ones who are not going to provide the votes to make the cuts that you're talking about. And the truth of the matter is that is correct. We have a lot of people on the Hill who like to talk about spending cuts until it actually comes time to cut spending. And I think there's a broad frustration with Elon on that. Now, to this whole American Party or whatever he's calling it, I think it's a bad idea. I saw your interview with Ron John before I came on, and Ron Johnson's correct. What it's going to do is in these marginal districts where they're super marginal, you're going to empower Democrats to win more seats, and you actually might influence the presidential election with where a Democrat will become president of the United States. And if you think they're going to take spending seriously, I mean, that's just a flat out lie. We were trying to do common sense reforms in Medicaid in this bill, like simple stuff. We didn't even get to the heavy meat in Medicaid. These are like trimming on the edges is what we did in the one big beautiful bill. And the Democrats are running around the country acting like we kicked 50 million people off of health insurance. It's not true. It's a lie. But that's how they respond to this stuff. So, I think, for Elon and his team, a third party, I don't think is the way to go. I think if anything, and I do also agree with Ron Johnson. I think Governor DeSantis also put out that call the other day. Let's be focused on the Article 5 Convention of States.
Yeah,
and let's actually do things like a constitutional amendment around term limits for members of Congress, because I fully support that. I think it's long overdue.
I got to jump. I would love to get you back and appreciate your time. Keep your eye on this guy. This guy is the probably one of the most up and coming rising stars in the Republican Party. Byron Donalds of the great state of Florida. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we'll be back 2.5. Very quickly, just a couple. I have time for a couple of these. It's funny how all of a sudden the mainstream media, the Democrats, are calling for the release of the Epstein documents. Remember that? For 15 years, the mainstream media, the monsters, avoided the topic of Jeffrey Epstein. We figured it's because Clinton and Gates and Obama were probably on the list. But of course, here in 2025, if it can make Trump or his team look bad, the Democrats can't help but talk about it. And they can't stop talking about it now. Here's that guy over at CNN, the hypocrite, Jake Tapper, unofficial leader of the media minions, whining about the delayed release of the long-awaited Epstein documents.
So what's really going on here? I mean, what's really going on? Well, experts such as our friend Julie Brown from the Miami Herald, who's been covering Epstein for years, say that the notion of Epstein having an easy-to-access client list is likely a red herring. And that's what the Trump administration is relying on, that there likely isn't a list per se. But they are also now relying on the fact that because it's MAGA influencers who often put forward so many falsehoods, legacy news media won't push the point, that while there might not be a list, there are certainly files that can be released.
Well, one more on this topic. Pam Bondi spoke about the delay, went even further back over the past few months and clarified some of her remarks about the situation. Now, listen to this.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was.
So, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, you heard Byron Donalds say he thinks there must be a list somewhere. You think? I mean, there must be, right? Because how do you put Ghislaine Maxwell behind bars for what is supposed to be providing access to women to a bunch of dudes? I mean, I don't know. We need to know more. And if there's a reason that we're not getting that list, and when originally it was there and we all knew it was there or on her desk, let's find out. I bumped into Pam Bondi yesterday too. Didn't get a chance to talk to her about it, but she promised we'd do a sit down, and I will ask if I get that sit down. All right, before I head to break, I want to remind you about the podcast. You can sign up there, subscribe anywhere on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Rumble, iHeart, Hear Rev. Sign up anywhere. It's always free. And you get a bunch of content. But also, I want you to, don't forget, call this number. It's the 800 number, 888 number, actually, 601-0032. Always toll free. We're going to read some of or listen to some of your voices at the end of the show. This is a very popular segment. Call that number. Keep it brief, keep it clean. We'll be back 2.5 minutes. Oh, Ben, what's that? What is
Looks like
that?
a volcano, active volcano in Hawaii.
No, that's an AI. You did an AI, didn't you? That's real? All right, that's real.
Yeah, I believe so.
So, Eric Swallwell, remember that guy? Eric Swallwell, congressman from California who slept with Fang, the Chinese spy. Chinese spy was working for Dianne Feinstein, the California senator. Eric Swallwell was sleeping with her. Well, he's gone full anti-America this week. It's almost like the congressman have some sort of meltdown he's going through. He's always all over the place, but this week he seems to have hit a mental breaking point. Here's Swallwell calling for an investigation into the Trump administration because somehow they caused the flooding in Texas.
I do think as lawmakers, we have a responsibility, though, to look at, did cuts affect the ability for folks on the ground and at the camp to have an earlier, better warning? But this is really going to, should we just attack government for government's sake? And for the last 6 months, we've seen an effort to undermine the hard work of government workers, whether it's air traffic controllers who keep planes from colliding in the air, or FEMA first responders who go into the harshest hit places in America.
So Swalwell, you do realize that river rose 26 feet, not inches, 26 feet in 45 minutes, right? Any warning? Those kids were stuck. Unfortunately, they were stranded. There was no warning that they could have gotten in time. 26 feet in 45 minutes. Swalwell is an idiot. He's so deranged that he's actually suggesting that now ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE agents should be arrested simply for doing their jobs, the ones they're supposed to do. Listen.
It's terrorizing Americans, our friends and neighbors, otherwise known as immigrants, many of them. But these are folks who, they go to our churches, they work at our grocery stores, they work on construction sites, they work in childcare, they work in many jobs that would not be filled had they not done it. And I also just sit back and ask, who asked for this? Americans were told that the most violent individuals would be deported, and we're now seeing in the numbers that is a very small percentage of who is being targeted. But Chris, we're not helpless. Democratic attorneys general in these states have their own law enforcement abilities. And I would recommend, and I have recommended to them, use those capabilities.
Give us an example of how.
Well, if these agents are committing assault or battery, you can charge them.
All right, Mr. Swalwell, you asked who asked for this? Well, it turns out that across the aisle, across all political platforms, left, center, and right, 67% of the people believe that illegals should be deported. All illegals should be deported. And by the way, the study just found also that 70% of the deportees, 70% of people that Trump's sending back, have criminal records in addition to breaking the law by coming across the border. Have additional criminal records, Swalwell. That's who asked for it. How about one more from this nut job moron, Swalwell, who's so in love with the illegals that he actually wants to take jobs away from hardworking Americans, hand them right over to the illegals. Listen.
I would say it doesn't make economic sense because we have shortages in agriculture, in childcare, in food and beverage, in hospitality. There are work shortages all over our country that Nicaraguans and Hondurans are filling. And if they're not committing violent crimes in our community, wouldn't we want them to take those jobs and have all of us pay less?
They are. They're committing violent crimes at a much higher rate than the general population, Swalwell. Just look at the statistics. It's right there. Just look at it. And by the way, the Supreme Court just slapped these district judges down for saying these judges who are stopping Trump from doing what they were elected to do. Supreme Court is saying enough is enough with these local judges becoming activist judges. They're on the wrong side of this one. And by the way, the American people across the political platform want the illegals, especially the criminal illegals, out of the country. How about this one? Tiffany Cross, who just became the latest left-wing mouthpiece to go on CNN and float a baseless conspiracy theory about Trump and ICE. She just said that this administration is rounding up illegals to throw them into concentration camps. Take a listen to this.
Normalizing a government agency disappearing people. We are normalizing, we're talking about it like it's no big deal that they are kidnapping people and transporting them to concentration camps, both domestic and foreign. I think
that's kind of insulting to,
I think it's
Jewish
insulting what they're
Holocaust
doing.
survivors.
It is not insulting to Jewish
Okay.
I find it insulting that you could even fix your mouth to defend this disgusting behavior.
Ovens at these?
It's not a death
It
camp.
doesn't matter. It's a concentration camp what they're doing.
You don't kidnap a criminal, you arrest a criminal. That's what they're doing. They broke the law coming across the border. And by the way, Trump is being very careful to really focus on the violent criminals that they catch to send them back first. They'll get to the rest of them, but the first ones. But to say that they're kidnapping the illegals, really? I don't know. Do you kidnap does the New York Police Department kidnap the murderer on the street when they catch him? No, they cuff him, arrest him, and throw him in jail. It's not kidnapping, you idiot. Number one. And number two, the American people want this to happen, Tiffany Cross. But go ahead, liberals, Democrats, left-wing media. Keep taking the side of the violent criminals instead of the victims. It's going to work out real well for you. The ICE outrage has really dominated the news cycle this week because the Democrats all over the country continue to whine and complain about something that's clearly not going to stop. This guy, let's go Brandon, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, a man whose seat truly could not be hotter. He just said that the ICE agents, not the violent illegals, the ICE agents who terrorize the streets of Chicago, I guess they want them to be maskless, but they want the illegals to wear the masks. Watch.
The other things and all the other cuts pays for a massive increase in the masked secret police that are terrorizing our communities. ICE. ICE will now have a larger budget than all but 15 of the world's militaries. It's a 4-year total. Its 4-year total is more than every military except for the United States and China. This is a direct assault on the civil liberties of all Americans and will fundamentally undermine our rights.
So, Mr. Brandon Johnson right there, I'm looking at this. Brandon Johnson, Chicago mayor. What do you think his approval rating is? I mean, a bad approval rating would be, you want to be above water, so you want more than 50% approval, less than 50% disapproval. So 50-50 is pretty bad. 60-40 against is horrible. Brandon Johnson's approval rating as mayor in Chicago, 6.6%. Under 7% approval rating. So these leftist morons are buying into the ideology that's sinking their party. One more. Another leftist lunatic, Stacy Abrams, doing anything she can to preserve what is left of her relevance. It's dwindling quickly. Her latest comments were unsurprisingly, get this, about ICE, another one. But she thinks that Trump's desire to secure our border and improve our national security means that he's looking to cancel elections. Watch.
You send the U.S. Marines into spaces they should not be. You send the National Guard in. You kidnap people off of the streets and pretend that's normal, because that's how you quiet dissent, because you make everyone afraid that if they don't do what you want, they might be next. And once you've done those 9 steps, step 10 is easy. That's when you decide there won't be new elections, because everyone's either afraid, poor, broken, or complicit.
Call me crazy. Have we not heard enough of Stacy Abrams? I mean, she lost her Georgia election. Then she wouldn't concede. And then after she wouldn't concede, when Trump said that the 2020 election was stolen, Stacy Abrams said that Trump was an election denier. He was threatening democracy by not admitting that he lost the 2020 election. Meanwhile, she didn't concede the election that she herself lost. These lunatics, these liberals, they're just such hypocrites. Do we even care what they say anymore? We have some of your voicemails and some good ones coming up right after the break. All right, so here's the deal. I promise you voicemails. I tell you, I thought we were going to do voicemails. I got something even better for you. We have Mr. Stephen K. Bannon. Bannon's back in the house at the end of the 4 o'clock show. Bannon, good to have you, my friend.
Well, hang on.
Yes.
The reason I've been so overwhelmed and putting the afternoon show together, there's been so much that's why I need more time, like study, cramming at the last second. I love doing the handover, but I've been so jammed. And I'm not going to give it up. We got a VIP that's going to join us at the top of the show. So
you want to tell us who it is?
Very special announcement.
All right. Well, speaking of VIP, Steve, if you don't just listen to this quick soundbite, Ben, roll a quick soundbite, and Steve can weigh in.
If the Chinese spy balloon entered the United States airspace in Minnesota, how long would it take for the Defense Department to knock it down? Would it take a whole week like it did Joe?
I know, because I trained there at Camp Ripley in northern Minnesota. There's got to be a fighter jet up there capable of interdicting it immediately. So it would be a matter of minutes, I would imagine, hours if we're off our game. but not days like that. I mean, they wanted to
and so, Steve, I wanted to roll that because it was really a great event yesterday. You had the Agriculture Department, Brooke Rollins. You had Pete Hegseth, Defense. You had Justice there, Pam Bondi. You had Kristi Noem. You had everyone there, Senate, House, and they're all concerned about Chinese buying our farmland, buying our food processing, and doing it certainly close to some of our military bases. This is a long time coming. What are your thoughts on this?
Not just that, I had Eric Bolling. You were there covering it live, and then later, didn't you do the cabinet room also? Were you in the cabinet also and there yesterday? You asked a question. When did you ask the question?
I asked the question at the event. That's right. I was in front of the event happened in about 100 degrees in D.C. I sweat through every single article of clothing. It was hot as you know what. And, that was at D.C. And then we did the interviews with Brooke and Pete afterwards. But what a great idea, bringing together these people. Yeah, go ahead.
Amazing. We even fought this for a long time. Look, it's incredible. The food security is national security, the farmland. You see the Make America Healthy Again movement starting to emerge with MAGA. You've seen the policies come out. I thought it was fantastic. Plus, I thought Brooke Rollins did a great job. She stepped up to the plate and said no amnesty, right? Strategic deportations, which, you got to make the interpretation there. Natalie Winters wasn't happy about that. But I thought it was a great event. And finally focus on the black hand of the Chinese Communist Party everywhere.
You imagine, Steve, imagine what's going on in Beijing when they hear that all those deals they cut, because the Chinese government's part of every deal they cut, even if it's a private, allegedly a quasi-private company. Smithfield Foods, Tyson Foods, and the other processors in farmland. They might get those things clawed back to the United States and cut them out. They got to be ticked off.
They know that President Trump's administration is on watch. People, taking China as the existential threat, not a peer competitor, but an existential threat to the country, I think, and to the nation, permeates the Trump agenda. And I think you can see that everywhere. In fact, later in the show, we're going to have Jack Posobiec's going to join us in studio. We're going to talk about some of these things, and particularly the Supreme Court ruling. We can start to take apart the deep state. So a lot to go on in that regard also. Eric, I do want to say something. I've been so jammed with everything, all the news, everything going on, putting the show together, particularly the afternoon show it kind of comes up on us with news of the afternoon. And so Bolling and I have been trying to get together here in D.C., and particularly Butterworth's. And normally what happens, you've heard the big, beautiful bill. Bolling is an expert in the bigger, better deal, BBD. So if something comes up the last second, Bolling, hey, look, a senior administrative official wants to take me to dinner. I'm going to Cafe Milano. So yesterday was actually my turn. I was so overwhelmed, my turn to stiff Bolling. But it was only for drinks. It was only for drinks.
And instead of hanging out for dinner with Steve, I left you something at Butterworth's and Raheem. And guess who was at Butterworth's, by the way? I'm bearing the lead. John Fetterman, Senator John Fetterman, was hanging out at Butterworth's. Who'd have thought? I think he was there because he was looking for, certainly not me, but Steve Bannon.
No, Fetterman was with Ian Bremmer. Ian Bremmer, the big Democratic kind of the geopolitical thinker. They're hanging at Butterworth's. I think we have a possibility of flipping both those guys. I think there's potential of flipping. We just got to keep working.
I think Fetterman wants to be Bannon. He's wearing the hoodie. Yeah.
How did you? He likes to hold it. So, what was your bigger, better deal? You blew me off for dinner. I blew you off for drinks. Where'd you end up going? Cafe Milano, and what?
I went to Joe's.
What power player were you hanging with?
I went to Joe's, and I sat at the bar at Joe's alone and had a piece of fish and a shrimp cocktail, if you're asking. But I certainly would have rather stayed with you throughout the night and have dinner and just pick your brain and learn something like we do right here with the folks. And by the way, the folks do like the handoff. I will tell you, the Rumble chat lights up.
No. And the Rumble chat is pretty tough hombres. I love the handoff. The only time we don't do the handoff if I'm behind, my crack team, we're behind putting the show together. We're just jamming it. But Eric has been fantastic. And thank you. You got to do more coming back to D.C.
Yeah, next time we'll sit down. I'll come sit with you again. That was a lot of fun last time. Steve, I'll give you the show a little bit early because you have a big guest. You got something big coming up. Are you talking about the Supreme Court slapping down the lower courts by chance?
We have that, but we have something actually bigger and actually even more important to start off with. It's my favorite the neo-Brandeisian movement of antitrust, which is actually unifying the country behind the scenes and where the power players are. Eric Bolling,
I
thank
get to
you so
listen
much,
to the
brother.
show. I'm
Appreciate it.
going to stay in headsets, listen to the show. Steve, have a great one. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you, sir.